How y'all doing today? Again, my name is Brico, and I'm with the Mighty Warrior Ministries. And today, I want to discuss something that has to do with sin entering into the world. There's a scripture in Romans chapter 5, verse 12, that talks about sin entering into the world. And what I want to do is create a scenario, and we're going to apply this scenario to life. And so we're going to go to Romans chapter 5, verse 12. That is Romans chapter 5, verse 12. And again, this is just my take on what the scripture says about sin entering into the world and putting that in a live situation and using that live situation so that we can use it to look at different relationships in life. So we're going to look at a business relationship, and then we're going to map that. We're going to take that and put it with other relationships and see if it fits. So Romans chapter 5, verse 12, it reads, "Wherefore, as by one man," right? One individual, "sin," or a violation, "entered into the world." And so if we want, we can pay attention to this part of it, that through one man, right? One man was a portal for sin entering into the world. Again, we are the gatekeepers of the wrath of God. And we are the gatekeepers to either allow the wrath of God to come up on the earth or not to allow the wrath of God to come up on the earth. We are the gatekeepers. And it also says, "and death," or separation from God, by sin or by the violation. So with the violation comes separation from God. For some reason, it happens that way. If you give a child and you give a child a rule and you say, "don't do something," and that child does it anyway, knowing that they're not supposed to do it, somehow they feel like they're separated from you, like they might hide. I think that's just that comes with the territory. And so it says, with separation by the violation. And so death or separation passed on to all men, for all have sinned, or all have violated. And we have probably heard this scripture a lot of times. I know I have. But I like to use live sort of situations so that I can make it real to me, so I can have some type of clearer understanding. And so what we're going to look at a customer, a company, and an employee. Okay? We're talking about a customer, a company, and an employee. And normally what happens is that, let's say these reviews that the customer gives, and we're going to just talk about reviews, and we're going to talk about how sometimes things can happen at a service situation and how we're going to look at that with other relationships. And so with this, we're going to say that the customer, right? The customer had a complaint, and his complaint was that it is a terrible experience, that the experience that he had was terrible with the company and the employee. So that was his complaint. It was terrible. Well, when you look up that word terrible, terrible means dangerous. Okay. So automatically, if you are a company and you get a report from a customer that says that the employee and what he experienced with the employee was terrible, and he actually put the company and the employee together, all have sinned because the customer was dissatisfied. So let's look and see if we can see danger or terribleness in the comments, because they leave comments. And so let's just say that the customer, let's see what kind of image did he form, because to say that he got terrible service or dangerous service, that's serious. And that's a serious, let's say that could be defamation of character of a person. Because if you're speaking that employee could get fired because of what a customer wrote based on an emotional base. But let's just see if emotional stuff happens. Let's see if you can identify with this scenario. So the employee, this is what the customer, let's say this is what the customer says. The employee shows up wearing a big mask. Now, already there's an attack. So now that we see that something that this customer has partook of something and has created some kind of image and has agreed with it and received it into himself, and the first thing he can think about is that the mask that we wear for COVID, it was just too big. So that seems emotional. Could be, I don't know. But also, let's see what else the customer has to say. The customer couldn't understand what the employee was saying. Okay, so is that emotional or is that not emotional? So could you imagine the employee being in the house without saying a word, without no understanding completely, with maybe some more, or maybe the customer might be a little more irate about it? Or is this an exaggeration because of the big mask? And so now look at this image that this customer is creating of a scenario. So one, big mask. Two, can't understand him. And then we have to ask ourselves, did the customer ask the employee, excuse me, employee, I can't hear you. Is there a way that you can maybe, can you speak up? I don't understand what you're saying. Can you put that in layman's terms? Do you think the customer even engaged the employee and let them know that they couldn't understand what they were saying? Then the customer says employee did not have the proper size equipment and couldn't reach a certain area for a particular repair. Okay, I think there's some weight to that. Don't have the equipment, but could the employee get the equipment? Did the employee said, well, I can't never fix it because I don't have the equipment? And is not having the equipment, is that dangerous? Is that terrible? Is not really understanding what somebody says, is that dangerous? Is that terrible? And so sometimes when we're dealing with people, they will try to say something about us out of their anger because that individual's angry, and they will exaggerate everything else after that. And they will put it up on you, and really the customer might not say anything about themselves. And we'll see if that's the case in this scenario. And so the customer says they haven't heard back from the employee. And I understand communication is key. And so maybe the company is supposed to call back, the employee call back. I don't know. Maybe there should have been some communication, but is that dangerous? Is that terrible? And so what I want to look at is how we can really damage a person's character, and how sin starts by one person being activated, by one person consuming or receiving whatever this image or some kind of pain or frustration, maybe abandonment because the job couldn't get done, and maybe they had an expectation. But is having an expectation the employee's or the company's fault? And to top it off, very unprofessional. So to me, those are things that are said, but those are things that can actually cause an employee to lose his job. Now remember, death through sin. So now we're going to look at death. One, death already started with the individual. because abandonment, separation, death, right? Now we got because they had an image and they maybe they took their eye off of what they're supposed to, and so now they're creating this image, and they are speaking things that are not true about another individual, which also, let's say with that employee, if that employer severs the relationship with the employee, that's another death. Let's say that same customer writes a review, and that review goes on the internet and other people read it. That's another death. That means other people might read it and they might not get no business because of it. And the employee doesn't have a job to feed his family. That's how something so minor, especially in a community of people, this is just in a business setting. But let's see, right? What did the actual technician do when he was there? Was he dangerous? Was he terrible? Let's just see what the customer has to say what actually took place. The customer says that the employee replaced one device. So one piece of equipment, he did that. That doesn't seem too terrible, and that doesn't seem too dangerous. The employee also told the customer that they needed some kind of they needed something to take care of some kind of maintenance issue. So basically it's something that maybe the customer can get to provide maintenance on something he already has or something like that. And so maybe giving some advice. So the employee giving the customer advice, dangerous, very unprofessional, terrible. And you even got to look at, let's say the company, the person that's looking at this, are they even analyzing it in this way to see if they're making a good decision, or are they firing people over emotion, customer emotion, destroying people's lives, families not having no money, husbands and women and children and teenagers and everybody not able to go to work over an emotional comment. And later on, that customer might have forgot that they even said anything about it. They done moved on with their life, even though they done left disaster in the path. Also, the customer says that the employee said that they could not check things in other locations because they didn't have the proper equipment, but that they would come back with the proper equipment to check those things. And so I don't see any terribleness in that. I don't see any danger in that. And so, again, sometimes we got to ask ourselves, do customers sometimes have a troubler? Or the person that is speaking against us, do they have a troubler? Is something going on that's troubling them on the inside? What was the customer really struggling with? That's a good question to know. Like, what was he really struggling with that actually brought forth that type of response? And again, this is how sin spreads. Again, through one person, and then again, it can go through a line. We can see how just in a company setting, how it can destroy business for the business. It can also destroy the family of the employee or whoever was employed. And that's just in that one setting. But if you have a whole, world or a whole, group of people doing this to one another, it can be very devastating. Kind of like how we can see life being devastating today. And so I was just, thinking, how can I explain this scripture to show you how sometimes what we view things with, our glasses, how we view things matters. What we say about our brothers and sisters matter, and it has an effect. It can cause a very dramatic change for people's lives forever. just because of a split second piece anger, just like a split second fire can destroy a lot of things. A split second defamation of character about somebody in a company can destroy things. Also, too, I think it was an expectation. See, when we have expectation, where there's a law, right, then sin is waiting. So anytime we have expectations of something and they're not met, I don't know if that's a reason to get angry or to kindle with anything, and to cause disaster on other people. Even if, let's say, you're in a room. Have you ever been in a room and was angry? But because you was angry when people talked to you, you said things a certain way or you behaved in a certain manner. Your behavior had an effect on the whole room or the atmosphere. And so, again, it is very, very dangerous to be that portal, to be the person to allow that violence to come through, or that type of behavior to come through, because this is just a company, an employee, a customer situation. But we all have a situation where we ran into a certain particular thing that happened to us, where somebody either said something against us and other people might have believed it. They might have treated us differently, causing all this, all this extra stuff. And so I just want to encourage people to encourage somebody, lift people up, understand where people are coming from. Let's just think for a minute. Did the customer know about the employee's family, that they had bills? Do you think the customer cared? Or was they more concerned about what they was feeling emotionally? Was they concerned about something that wasn't even real, a fake image that they developed on their own? Do you think that maybe something could change? But people are leaving us bad reviews all the time when we interact with them, how we behave if we rub them the wrong way. People are getting agitated a lot easier these days. So be careful. Speak loving and kindly words to one another so that you don't partake in allowing the portal of hell and anger come out of you. Thank you for listening. I appreciate you. Again, listening to me ramble. Again, that scripture was Romans chapter 5, verse 12. It's how sin filters in, starting with one individual. Please don't let that individual be you. Talk to you later.